Hi everyone, I'm John Rethlin back with the second part of my retro review of Bret Hart's failed WCW run. This could end up being turned into a three-parter because, boy, part one, which if you didn't see it in Future Me remembers, the link is up here. I left off right after Bret turned heel and helped Hogan beat Savage right after Spring Stampede 1998. And I believe Randy Savage did suffer a legit knee injury and needed some time off. In fact, he was off soon after this because he was just that goddamn beat up. And to be fair, at that point, his knees were pretty much shot because he'd been wrestling since the 70s, so that kind of makes sense. So with Bret, though, they had already cooled him off completely. He was basically just another guy. He was going to fight for WCW, and then he joined the NWO, or didn't join the NWO, but turned heel and aligned with Hogan, but didn't join the group. By that point, WCW, as much as they were still white-hot business-wise, things were starting to crumble. They were really starting to crumble bad. So, looking at, all the stuff that he was doing, and once again, I'm not going to go over every single TV match, minute detail, but I'm going to hit these high points and talk about his pay-per-view matches. So, we go Slamboree 98, which Slamboree was an interesting pay-per-view concept. At first, they would just have legends there. They would do the, they would just have some fun and everything. Those are the earlier incarnations. And then Slamboree got to be just kind of a standalone event, where they would have some matches that would at times be pretty good, and then a lot of times it felt like very much a filler pay-per-view. So he beats Randy Savage with the sharpshooter because Randy Savage had that knee injury. Roddy Piper is a special guest referee the next night because of all this dubious shit and all this interference and all this bullshit and Bret Hart being aligned with Hogan. Piper said, "No, I'm just going to change my mind, and Savage is going to be awarded the match via DQ." Okay, cool, whatever. We're already reversing decisions. We're already making all this stuff. But Piper had a weird WCW run. And I'm talking, obviously you had the Jim Crockett promotion run and stuff like that, but you had his run in, like late 96 to like late 99, early 2000. It was just ridiculous how Piper was featured at times as a guy, like, one of the guys, and then they would just feature him in the most nonsensical stuff. But anyway, so Piper declares Randy Savage the winner. All right, so now we're just pretty much making shit up as we go. And then he wrestles Benoit on June 22nd Nitro. The NWO helped. And because of the Canadian ties and everything, and the fact that Bret and Benoit had a history as far as being friends and stuff like that and having respect for each other's work, Bret's like, "Hey, Benoit, come join the NWO." Benoit, "No, I'm not going to." Yeah, he just does that and everything. I don't think he made that noise, which would have actually been kind of amusing. It probably would have popped everybody. I think I would have absolutely laughed if he had done that. But Benoit refuses to join. Okay, so Bret is now a member of the NWO, despite not being a member of the NWO. I have no goddamn idea what they're doing anymore. I don't think they had a goddamn clue what they were doing. So we go to Great American Bash 1998, and this is when things were really heating up because we were just a month away from Rodman and Malone clashing, while DDP teamed with Malone and Hogan teamed with Rodman in a match that went on a bit long, but boy, that was something else. And Rodman was also drunk because fucking Christ, he had to have been drunk with how he was acting. But anyway, let's get back to Great American Bash 1998. He teamed with Hogan to take on Piper and Savage, and okay, so it was a DQ finish. And then this was also something where Savage was going to wrestle Piper because they had this uneasy truce, but they were also having this battle of wills because, there were two legends and everything. Everything was going pretty goddamn good. And what happened is they were going to have a match afterwards. So Savage submits to the sharpshooter, but his knee's all hurt. And Savage is still insisting on going through the match and stuff like that. So, okay, they got Bret and Hogan teaming up, where Hogan's keeping Bret underneath his goddamn thumb. And then Piper beats Savage soon after. And I think that was it. And I think Savage left to get the knee surgery finally, because his knee was pretty much completely shot by that point. He did not have much of anything left because, again, he'd been wrestling for like 20 goddamn years. So, okay, cool. All right, we got this going. We got Bret teaming with Hogan, not being featured in a title program. Oh, wait, then he starts facing off against Booker T for the TV championship. And you're thinking, all right, Bret Hart working with Booker T, who was separated from Stevie Ray. No, not like that. They're brothers. And no, not because they're black. This analogy, this whole analysis of this thing is getting away from me. The whole point is Booker was TV champion. He was breaking out as a singles wrestler. Stevie Ray had stepped to the side. He'd had an injury or something. I don't remember the exact thing. But Booker T was a young up-and-coming guy that people had watched grow from a tag team wrestler, face to heel and stuff like that, and had fought against the NWO. And now, okay, we're going to feature Booker T. He's the TV champion. And they muddy the waters with the DQ finish and everything. Instead of having Booker maybe beat Bret, or Bret beat Booker and then hold the TV championship and put over Booker on a pay-per-view, they just botch this whole goddamn thing. They just botch everything with it. And it was a match. I do recall seeing that match and thinking, this match should have been a lot better than it was. And it was slow, methodical, and not methodical in a good way. We're like, okay, Bret's just wearing him down, being a heel, beating up his leg and everything. Booker's going to make the comeback. Now, match is just boring. And it did not work. Now, you could, really quickly, you guys could argue that Bret maybe didn't have all that much passion put into WCW. But at that point, months and months into his WCW run, could you blame him? Could you really blame him? I wouldn't blame him for not having any faith in what WCW was fucking doing, because they weren't fucking doing anything with him. They were fucking wrecking everything. It was goddamn ridiculous. This is what I don't fucking understand. So, we get the program at the TV championship. It doesn't last very long. So we then go to Bash at the Beach 98, where that match happened, and yeah, it was via DQ, and it was fucking bullshit. So Bret's being put in the middle of the card where it could work if you do it right, and they weren't doing it right. So then we had the vacated U.S. Championship because Goldberg was U.S. Champion, had beaten Raven after Spring Stampede 98, had held the championship, beaten Hulk Hogan on July 6, 1998, and was a double champion. Well, he had to relinquish the U.S. title because you can't be a double champion. We would find out how much bullshit that was, because you could be a singles champion and a tag team champion, but you couldn't hold two singles championships, at least at that time. And then it just got to the point where they just fucking gave up and just let people hold whatever. So anyway, U.S. title's vacated. DDP's rising up. Had a great feud with Randy Savage in 1997, and even a cage match on some Nitro in 1998. So there was something there. The DDP, even though he was older than Bret at the time, a few years older, still it was like, and I don't want to even say up and comer, but DDP was a late bloomer. So Bret, okay, had been in years and years in wrestling. And you figured this could be a program that could go for a few months. But nope, he, because of Giant Health, because of the whole NWO thing, DDP lost. Bret Hart won the U.S. Championship. Okay, cool. He won the U.S. Championship, the vacated U.S. Championship. They're going to take him to the stratosphere with a mid-card title like he did with the Intercontinental Championship in WWE. WWE did some good stuff with him, and they're going to do the same thing here. No, he loses it to Luger on a Nitro, I think just after Road Wild 98 or just before. That's a bit muddy right there. I don't quite remember that one. The date is a little bit off. I think it was just before, but anyway. He loses it on Nitro and then gains it back on Thunder, proving that title matches were just meaningless. But then we get to Fall Brawl 1998. We get to the War Games. It was Piper, Warrior, and DDP against Stevie Ray, Bret Hart, and Hulk Hogan of Team NWO Black and White. And then Team Wolfpack was, I want to say, Sting, Nash, and Luger. So, all right. So you got 3 teams of 3 in Fall Brawl 98 and War Games. And this is the first time where pinfalls could count, because before it was everybody has to get in there. Everybody get in here, and then they have to do the submission, or they have to do submit or surrender. Like, oh yeah, I give up, or I can't take anymore. Just submit or surrender. It sounded cool, but they're both the same goddamn thing, submit or surrender, because if you submit, you are surrendering the match. Redundancy in wrestling is key. All right, so he's in that match. And the match could even end before all the members got in the ring. So it's fucking ludicrous. And it's all goddamn chaos. And I talked about this match before, but Warrior got injured, tore something in his bicep. Injured his bicep trying to get out of the cage because he was a clueless, roid up fuck. And fuck Ultimate Warrior. I'm glad he's not around anymore. Because he was a piece of shit. He blamed, said that Bobby Heenan's cancer should take over. And hopefully it does. And he blamed Katrina victims. He did a whole bunch of shit, by the way. If you don't believe me, Google stuff that Ultimate Warrior said. Yeah, he's a goddamn crackpot. Regardless of what side of the fence he was on, he was a goddamn crackpot. And is a piece of shit. So, you got that going on. You got that storyline going. Oh, yeah, and then the trapdoor thing that injured Davey Boy Smith's back. Because Ultimate Warrior had to make his fancy schmancy entrance into and do all that and the Warrior and do all that shit. So anyway, and then beat his chest and do all this stuff and all the smoke and ow. And then do all, the smoke machine. It wasn't smoke and mirrors. It was all... It was a fucking catastrophe or cat ass trophy, whatever you want to call it. And DDP pins Bret, I believe. Pins him after the Diamond Cutter. Cool, okay. I don't know why the fuck you couldn't have just done that in a singles match, and you couldn't have just done a War Games where you had these teams face off and just do something, because they had every opportunity to do something. They had every goddamn opportunity to make the most of this momentum. Bret still had something, but nope, he's aligned with Hogan. And then he wasn't. And then he suddenly asked the fans for forgiveness. And, he wasn't aligned with Hogan in the NWO anymore. It was all this. It was just a lot of stuff. This was right after Flair's return, where he was white hot. And, he returned in Charlotte, I believe, or Greensboro. I think it was Charlotte. But he returned in huge reaction. And if it was Greensboro, I apologize. But I know it was in Flair's stronghold, and he was absolutely just revered. So you got Bret saying he's no longer aligned with the NWO, and he asks fans for forgiveness. He's going to be a good guy. He faces Hogan in a match on the September 28, 1998 edition of Nitro, and you got all this shit going. You got all this fucking shit going. They got every chance to turn it around with Bret almost a year into his WCW run, or even since he signed. And he got injured facing Hogan. Injured. Oh no, Sting comes in and subs in, and not Sub-Zeros, but comes in. It might as well have been Sub-Zero because this was ice goddamn cold how they did it. Bret ends up turning on Sting. And we do that. We have Sting. We have Sting. Just be made to look like a goddamn goof. And Bret, that was it right there. They had every chance to make Bret a babyface, and after that, it was pretty much just, it was nuked. It was nuked, and there was nothing that could be done about it. Even though Bret was still revered, and I'll get to a pop sometime either in this one or in another video, there was just nothing that could be done to save Bret Hart. Because WCW didn't care, or maybe he didn't care, or at this point, I don't think anybody would have cared, because Bret was such a great superstar and such a great wrestler, and they had just made him one of the guys. And then a little bit later on one of the Nitros, just before Halloween Havoc 98, they had him team with Hogan versus Sting and Warrior, so the Blade Runners were back, and this was a way to hype Hogan versus Warrior at Halloween Havoc '98. That match was a goddamn catastrophe. And then you get to what happened at Halloween Havoc, because you got Bret versus Sting. So Halloween Havoc 98 is regarded as one of the worst pay-per-views that WCW put on, and not even because all the matches were bad. There were actually some pretty good matches on that, a cruiserweight match, and there were some other good things, but they had so many dodgy finishes and a whole bunch of bullshit going on that Bret Hart faced Sting in a match that should have been great. Sharpshooter versus Scorpion. Sting versus Bret. You got WCW's guy versus, Bret, who was a WWE guy, and they had every opportunity to build this up, and what'd they fucking do? They did a slow-paced match, and I didn't expect Bret to go, fucking 40 miles an hour, because he was 41 at this point. He was 20 years into his in-ring career. But they could have done something with it. No, they did this whole thing where Sting got injured. Bret hit him with a bat, and then tapped him out, but Sting was totally out of it, so they just declared Bret the winner, so he retained the U.S. Championship. And then they built up this program with DDP again after this whole thing had happened in July, and we're okay, maybe we can do it a little bit better here. We had all this stuff going on, and Bret then would go on to face DDP at World War III 1998. He would lose it the next night, actually. It was the infamous night right after Halloween Havoc 98, where because the time overran and they didn't have the time slot filled, you had DDP and Goldberg get cut off, and they showed that match for free on Nitro to please the fans. And I don't know how much money they did or didn't lose on the pay-per-view. I'm not even going to get in here to get really to that, but just looking at what they could have done and cut off some of the time. I mean, Hogan Warrior did not need that much time, and a bunch of other matches probably went overtime, but I'm imagining a Hogan Warrior went the most overtime because Hogan couldn't really move, Warrior couldn't really move, and they're both fucking pieces of shit. And one's no longer with us, and oh god, I can't sleep at night because of that. And I know that makes me sound like a goddamn jackass. I don't wish death on anybody. I'm just not sorry that Warrior's not here because he was a piece of shit. So, the next night, DDP did not beat Goldberg on Halloween Havoc. They have DDP, injured ribs and all, beat Bret Hart, win the U.S. Championship. Cool. Okay, this is the way you do it. You take that reaction that DDP got when he had worked on Goldberg's shoulder, lifted him up. He tried to lift him up for the jackhammer, and then DDP hit that fucking diamond cutter. The place exploded. If DDP had beaten Goldberg's streak right there, I think the fans would have popped like insanely. And actually, I hate to say it, I think DDP should have beaten the streak. Definitely not. Excuse me for that. Definitely not. Definitely not had Nash do it. So World War III, U.S. Champion DDP versus Bret Hart, main event, not the World War III three-ring main event. No, we had Bret beat him. So he's a U.S. champion. During this time, he had a match with Dean Malenko where he suffered a groin injury. So he wasn't featured on any WCW pay-per-views. He wasn't featured on Starrcade 98. He wasn't featured on Sold Out 99. He wasn't featured on Super Bowl 99 due to that groin injury. And now he would still wrestle on occasion, but they weren't going to give him any programs. So they didn't give him any pay-per-view programs for 3 months. Then he lost the title to Roddy Piper at on a Nitro in February 99. Okay, cool. So we revisit that whole damn thing. And then we get to Bret's apex, I would say, as far as promos. And Bret was never the best promo guy. Never the best promo guy at all. He was somebody that could do some really, really good stuff, but he would end up not being the best at promos. Let's just say that. His best promos are probably a 6 or a 7, maybe. He had some great promos when he was a heel in 1997. The anti-American promos and all that, and cutting down Shawn Michaels and Triple H, and he was good. He was never great on promos. As much as I love Bret, he would have good ones on occasion, but anyway, enough of that. His promo, March 29th, 1999, they're in Toronto. Huge reaction for him because, one, he had a Maple Leafs jersey. Well, he had some Canadian sports jerseys, but he had Toronto's Maple Leaf jersey. And he's just running down Hogan. Can't get a match with Hogan. Can't get a match with Flair. Because they don't want to face him because he can outshine both of them. Focuses on Goldberg, saying, "Oh, Goldberg, putting up all this money to face Steve Austin." And says, "Let me tell you something. I beat Steve Austin every time I ever fought him." And it was that, and I would say his promo where he yelled at Vince just before Mania 13, 1997, were two of his best. He had other ones in 97, but this one sticks out because Bret was just absolutely having a whole lot of fun. He was really feeling it in front of that crowd. No, not like that. He was doing some great goddamn shit. And they have it where it's like, okay, he calls out Goldberg and you wonder why he's got the jersey on and stuff like that. Oh, he's just promoting the hometown people. Bret takes a spear from Goldberg. After Goldberg had been called a chicken, all that stuff. Goldberg spears him. Goldberg's down. Bret gets up. Struggles to his feet and stuff like that. 1, 2, 3. I mean, it's not a match where Bret counts Goldberg down. Takes off the jersey, reveals a metal plate. Infamous metal plate thing. That's one of the most memorable things that Bret Hart did in WCW. One of the greatest of all time, and that's one of the most memorable things, if not the most memorable thing he did in WCW, at least up to that point. How fucking sad is that? He then says, "You can put that in your pipe and smoke it. Hey, Bischoff, in the WCW, I quit." He had to get surgery because of the because of the groin injury. So after that, We would get something. This is where I'm going to wrap up, and then I'm going to continue part 3 here a little bit later. But he would have time off to recover. And then he was apparently supposed to come back sooner, but then Over the Edge 1999 happened. And Owen Hart tragically passed away because of that accident, where he fell to the ring. Cable, whatever. Accident happened. Dark Side of the Ring is going to cover it. And I can't wait to see that. I know I'm going to cry because Owen Hart was also one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. But Bret, I think, would cut a promo soon after on Nitro because he would need time to leave, to grieve, to be there for his family, to just take time to heal. He lost his youngest brother. And his younger brother, and that was just it. And it was a terrible tragedy. And just Owen meant so much to so many fans, and obviously meant so much to Bret, that Bret needed to take time off, and he wouldn't be seen for a number of months. So that's actually where I'm going to leave this off right here. And I'll probably dive into it a little bit more when I come back. So, part 3 is going to be coming up in a bit. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.